The 18th and 19th centuries were a time of great invention. We got the steam engine, the power loom, and factories that could churn out textiles faster than you could say horrific working conditions. Britain was at the forefront, building a glorious new industrial world on a foundation of coal, iron, and unrelenting optimism. This was progress, with a capital P. It meant cities exploded in size, fortunes were made overnight, and society was transforming. The only tiny, literally tiny, little catch was who they found to power these magnificent new machines. Turns out, the ideal employee for the shiny new future was about 4 feet tall and hadn't lost all their baby teeth yet. A truly inspired bit of human resources management. Why children? Well, for one, they were fantastically cheap. You could pay a child a fraction of an adult's wage, and they rarely had the leverage to unionize. But it wasn't just about the bottom line. Children were uniquely qualified for certain tasks. Their small, nimble fingers were perfect for mending broken threads on a spinning mule, a job called being a piecer. They were also the only ones small enough to be scavengers, crawling under the constantly moving machinery to pick up loose cotton scraps. This, as you can imagine, came with some occupational hazards. Losing a finger, a limb, or your entire head was just considered a minor workplace inconvenience, a distraction from achieving peak efficiency. The average workday for a child laborer was something of a marathon. We're talking 12, 14, sometimes 18 hours a day, 6 days a week. One young boy named Joseph Heibergum testified to a parliamentary committee that his workday started at 5 a.m. and ended at 8 p.m. He was 7. To keep the children awake and focused, overseers employed motivational tools, such as a heavy leather strap known as the strap. Or they might be weighted, which involved tying a heavy weight to a child's neck and having them walk up and down the factory aisles. All of this took place in a room filled with lung-clogging cotton dust and the deafening, non-stop roar of machinery. It was less a job and more a full sensory endurance test. If the textile mills weren't for you, there was always the exciting world of chimney sweeping. Master sweeps preferred to employ small boys, often as young as 4, because they could fit into the narrow, winding flues. They were often encouraged to climb faster by having a fire lit beneath them. This seems like a bad management technique. Many got stuck, suffocated, or fell to their deaths. Those who survived often developed a particularly nasty ailment later in life known as chimney sweep's carcinoma from all the accumulated soot. This was one of the first occupationally linked cancers ever discovered, a true medical innovation. Children were often sold to master sweeps by their parents or by parish orphanages who were keen to get them off the books. What a bargain! Now, you might be thinking this all sounds monstrous. But don't worry, the great thinkers of the day had it all figured out. Proponents of child labor argued it was actually good for the kids. It taught them a trade, instilled discipline, and most importantly, kept them from the idleness that leads to vice. Economists, channeling a very simplified version of Adam Smith's laissez-faire ideas, argued that any government regulation would cripple the industry. The free market, they insisted, would sort it all out. They believed the invisible hand of the market would eventually protect the children, though in practice it seemed more interested in slapping them. There was a genuine fear that if Britain stopped using child labor, countries like France would get a competitive advantage. It was a matter of national pride, you see. Perhaps the most organized system of exploitation was the pauper apprentice scheme. Overcrowded parishes in the South, particularly London, had a surplus of orphans. Meanwhile, new factories in the North desperately needed workers. The solution was an act of pure bureaucratic genius. The parishes would ship cartloads of children hundreds of miles away to factory owners. It wasn't slavery, of course, it was an apprenticeship. These children were legally bound to their masters until they were 21, working only for food and lodging. Sir Robert Peel the Elder, a factory owner himself, actually pushed through the first attempt at regulation in 1802, but it only applied to these pauper apprentices and was almost completely ignored. For effort, F for execution. After decades of this, a few people started to suspect that maybe, just maybe, working 7-year-olds to death wasn't the pinnacle of civilization. Reformers like Robert Owen, a factory owner who actually built a humane factory town, began to speak out. Then came Richard Osler, who wrote fiery letters to newspapers comparing the practice to slavery. But the real bombshell was the Sadler Report of 1832. Michael Sadler chaired a parliamentary committee that interviewed former child laborers, and their published testimonies were beyond shocking. Suddenly, the comfortable middle and upper classes were reading, in graphic detail, about the realities of factory life. It's amazing what happens when you actually ask the victims what's going on. The public outcry from the Sadler Report led directly to the Factory Act of 1833. This was a landmark piece of legislation. It didn't ban child labor, let's not get crazy, but it did introduce some radical ideas. For instance, no child under the age of 9 was to be employed in factories. A bold stance. Children aged 9 to 13 could only work 8 hours a day, and those 14 to 18 a mere 12 hours. What a vacation! Crucially, the act also mandated that children receive 2 hours of schooling per day. And for the first time, it created a professional body of salaried factory inspectors to enforce the law. The factory owners were, to put it mildly, not pleased. The government, in its infinite wisdom, hired a grand total of 4 inspectors to cover all the textile mills in the entire United Kingdom. 4. These men had the power to enter factories, collect evidence, and prosecute owners who were breaking the law. Their job was nearly impossible. Factory owners developed elaborate systems to thwart them, like lookouts who would signal an inspector's approach. Children would be rushed out back doors, hidden in cotton bins, or told to lie about their age. Some owners even kept 2 sets of books. The inspectors' reports make for fascinating reading, detailing a constant cat-and-mouse game between regulation and a pathological desire to make small children clean moving machinery. Just when you thought industry couldn't find a more depressing job for a child, it said, "Hold my coal." The conditions in coal mines were somehow even worse than in factories. Children as young as 5 worked as trappers, sitting alone in total darkness for 12 hours a day, their only job to open and close a ventilation door when a coal cart passed. Older children worked as hurriers, pulling heavy carts of coal, often on all 4s in tunnels too low to stand up in, chained to the cart like an animal. An 1842 report, complete with horrifying illustrations, exposed these conditions to the public, leading to the Mines and Collieries Act. This act banned all females and boys under 10 from working underground. Another shockingly controversial take at the time. The end of widespread child labor wasn't a single event. It was a slow, painful grind that lasted for decades. The 10 Hours Act of 1847 was another major step, limiting the workday for women and young people in textile mills to 10 hours. As technology improved, the economic argument for using children weakened. Bigger, faster machines required stronger, more skilled adult operators. Compulsory education laws, introduced later in the century, played a huge role by simply making children unavailable for full-time work. It took nearly a century of activism, legislation, and economic change to finally establish the radical notion that childhood should be for learning and playing, not for generating profit. A truly slow burn of an idea. Looking back, it's easy to judge. But the horror of industrial child labor wasn't just the product of a few evil factory owners. It was the result of a perfect storm. New technology, a desperate and available workforce, and a prevailing economic ideology that saw people as just another resource to be exploited. This period fundamentally shaped our modern world, forcing society to confront questions about the role of government, the rights of workers, and the very definition of childhood. The fight for these basic protections was brutal, and it serves as a rather pointed reminder that progress isn't automatic. It has to be fought for, usually against people who are making a lot of money from the status quo. Some things, it seems, never change. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to our channel for more historical insights. Thanks for watching, nerds!